Since it is 5:30. And if we can go around the table, we'll start with Lynn, and just so we know who's here.
I'm Lynn.
Paula. Paula Singletary. Paula. Are you here as a parent?
I'm both.
Okay.
Grandparent and employee.
What school?
Twin.
Okay.
She gets to wear both hats.
Amy Kemp, grandparent, volunteer.
Jessica
Extraordinaire, right? Right, Jake?
That's what
Honorary
Jake
team member,
says.
absolutely.
Kyle Livermore?
Welcome back, Kyle. Is it Livermore?
Yeah, Livermore.
M-O-R-E?
Just, yeah,
Okay, one R. Okay.
Michael Lounsbury.
Okay, you always have to spell your last name.
Lounsbury.
Okay. For some reason it's not coming up. Hi, Leon.
Leon Deuce. Jake.
And Jessica.
Super cute hair.
I know her hair is.
And Rebecca Davis. With her cute hair.
And, oh, I'm here. Alrighty. Thanks everybody for coming. Our agenda is not super long. I don't anticipate getting much past this tonight, but if we do, we can start dabbling in this. So we're going to work together to kind of start to create our 5 to 10 year plan for our facility. So I wanted to start by just going into the strategic plan, which I finally remembered to clean up, because I think the last time I opened it, it had still all the strike throughs and the red letters. So I fixed it all. Hi, Lori.
Hi. Hey, long time no see.
Yeah.
I realized as I was going through this that there's a lot that we're supposed to be doing this year. Okay. So goal 1 is that the district shall continue to maintain and upgrade existing facilities and plan for future facility needs. Grade alignments will be regularly reviewed to best support student success. The goal for enrollment capacity is recommended, and this is kind of this is what the strategic planning committee landed on. So as we're thinking about facilities, we have to keep those numbers in mind, and I'll leave this up while you're working. And then here are some of the activities. We're supposed to monitor growth trends and building and campus needs in order to make sure we're providing resources as needed. And then where appropriate, we'll coordinate with city and county officials to analyze growth trends and planning for future land acquisitions and construction projects. So we have met with, I think, 2 different developers. Everybody wants a positive letter from Lakeland when they go to the Rathdrum City Council. And so right now we're writing neutral letters, just because as those new developments are going in, we're not seeing an increase in kids really, because they're not coming with little people. So instead of saying we're against, we're just going to be neutral until our numbers start to come back up. But both of those groups have offered to try to help us find and then purchase land out near Hayden Canyon. So that's one area that we've talked about maybe needing a school site to keep Coeur d'Alene from stealing our people. Mr. Jones.
Hello.
How are you?
Hey, Bob. You're not soaked?
I'll grab one chair.
I'll get one. No, that's what I would get.
Bob, let me grab one. You can have this comfy one.
It's a
Hurt.
I gotta race
You lost.
You lost.
You lost that battle.
How are you?
Was that for
I thought I would see you all wet from the knees down.
Mostly elementary, because That's all of Garwood zone, and that it seems to be the school
Hi,
that
Ben.
we keep, kids
Thank you.
keep going to, so if we can move out that way. Plus, as parents are moving in there, if we don't have a school out there, elementary school in particular, if we don't have a school out there, then they start requesting to be annexed into the Coeur d'Alene's district because they're closer, so that's just something for us to look at. The second goal is that the district will continue in its efforts to maintain an equitable balance between all schools with regard to classrooms, the library, technology, playground equipment, and athletic facilities. And then we have some activities. And then goal 3 is around K-Tech, continuing our collaboration with Coeur d'Alene post-fall school districts. So that has to be part of what we want to look at. And then goal 4, resources will be needed in the future to support facility upgrades for support services. So child nutrition is in that little building that's over next door to Mountain View. And it's right now, it's sharing its space with the middle school alternative classroom. So a lot of their equipment is in a dry pod. Is that what that's called? Dry pod?
Mhm.
Yeah. Dry box. Thank you. Which we're trying to kind of eliminate, but wait, in this district storage is an issue. So we tuck things away in lots of different places. And then also facilities, and then transportation. So looking 10 years out, as we're kind of working together, one of the things that we might need to kind of think about is the traffic congestion on 41 in the morning before school. It's worse before school than it is after school. And I think that's partly because the middle school kids get out earlier than the high school kids do, and so parents are kind of have picked the kids up and have gotten out of the parking lot for the most part before the high school kids start to try to come out of their parking lot. But in the morning, everybody's going the same direction, and we have buses that are trying to get out on the highway.
And you have people commuting to work
And
at the same time that you don't have when they get out of school.
True. So everything just kind of gets bogged down. And it is dangerous for our buses sometimes to try to get out off that road, especially if they have to turn left to go either east on 53 or north on 41. And so just thinking about where we have land and how to address transportation, like is that the best place for it? We've talked a lot about, if we ever get to build out at near K-Tech, put a high school out there, whatever school out there, if there was space out there to be able to put transportation on that property, and I don't know if there would be with 30, almost 40, it's like 38-ish acres. If we were going to put all of the high school facilities out there that high school would have, that might get crowded, but
And to throw out another little fun caveat for that, ITD is working on a bypass plan, and one of the major considerations is turning Lancaster into a bypass area, which would mean you'd get another highway, an alternative to 95 that would run right by a future location for a new high school or whatever you put there. So we've been very nervous about that at the city, and they're supposed to release their top 3 to 4 plans, and if Lancaster's on there, there's a lot of serious concerns within the city because they want to widen it from
5 lanes, right?
more than that. They want to put out a 4-lane highway with a 36-inch wide median, or 36 foot wide median, which is the same as 41 between Post Falls and
That's 36 feet. Those medians are 36
Yep.
feet.
And they wanna put a local access road on either the north or the south side.
Wow.
And when you look at the right-of-way requirements for that,
They're
it's
gonna have to buy
200,
houses.
yeah, it's 232 feet, and no matter which way you do it, you would have to remove housing on either side or both sides, depending upon how they did
And
it.
how does that work when you have two schools sitting right there? Because you already have Parker Center and K-Tech.
Mhm.
And how does that work? Do
It's-
they get to take?
We
as
put
much-
our 2 cents in there, and hopefully that will remove Lancaster from that big of a highway bypass. If
So-
it's anything, it'd be a 5-lane road, which we've already got prepared
Right, I thought
away
that was the
for it.
last thing that I had heard. And then that's in addition to potentially the Hutter
No,
north south?
it's either or.
Okay, because at the State of the Community, he didn't talk at all about Lancaster, he just talked about Hutter.
Yeah, there's 23 options on the table right now, and they're gonna be trimming it down to about 4.
Okay. Anyway, transportation, where we have transportation is a bit of an issue, and that the board has been also just keeping in mind as far as like, cost cutting, cost savings. The board has been looking at ways to have a northern site for transportation so that we're not having to drive buses up and back every day to cut down on some of the miles, and then a southern site, so that could be part of your brainstorming as well. And that's it. So, we have whiteboards and we have markers. If you guys want to work kind of in groups of like, I don't know, 3 or 4. And I'll just leave this up and you can scroll, the mouse will be right here if you want to take a look at something. But we probably need to kind of start with goal 1. Maybe let's do that. Let's start with goal 1, and each group can kind of take a whiteboard and do some brainstorming with regard to, in 5 to 10 years, thinking about the buildings that we have. What do we think our facility needs might be?
What's current
So I-
capacities?
I knew you were going to ask me that question. Brian had a document that showed. Did you ever get that document, Jess?
I looked for it. I can keep looking, but I wasn't able to find it.
He did a presentation, and it's probably in a presentation and not a singular document, but he had a slide that had current enrollment and then maximum capacity and then functional capacity. Jake's
thought
nodding,
we took
so-
a-
You guys
We've,
did that at the
we've
last
seen that.
meeting.
We've seen
Yeah,
that.
you did it at the.
That was
That was an old doc that we were able to pull. It wasn't
yeah,
our
it wasn't
most
the-
current.
it wasn't ideal, and so I will pull up here though so that you can come up and look if you need to. I'll pull up the enrollment.
So 500 for elementary, is that each elementary school?
Mm-hmm.
Because we've already been kind of talking about how they're, you know,
They're going
300 we hit
down.
their capacity at some.
Yeah, so
buildings.
here's, is this today's? Oh, where's my reviews? To the bottom.
Because you don't have it taking the whole screen, so if you open it up to the whole screen, you still don't have it to the whole screen.
Click that
That's right.
big
This
box.
is all I needed.
Oh.
This is all I needed for right now. So this is today, as of today, John Brown has 372, Spirit Lake has 278, Apple's at 284, Betty Kiefer's at 370, Garwood's at 420, Twins at 283. And then,
So they want to know what it looks like to not quite double half of those?
right, so looking at where we are right now, I mean, part of what we put in the long range plan would be if we get to the point where these 6 schools get back up to the 500 range, what's the recommendation from this committee about how to address that?
The next question would be, how long is it going to take to build a school, so, because we kind of have to think about that as well. It's got like, we don't want to wait till it's all the way full. We need to wait, you know, we need to like, okay, it's like 3/4 and now we need to think about, you just said it'd take at least 2 years to build a school? At
Yeah, well,
least.
it takes a full
From
year.
From inception to occupancy.
It'll take a full year for a bond election, because there's gotta be a lot of community education to get us to, a bond, a successful bond election. And then once the bond is passed, then is it another, only one full year, or is it 18 months?
I mean, a lot of your preliminary planning can be done prior to the date of the bond election. You're not gonna have final drawings and that sort of thing until after you've done that.
Right, because
Your
you have to
preliminary
use the
planning
money.
can be done, so that's a fair piece of it, because you're gonna settle on, you know, certain elements of the design and that kind of stuff. But it'll take a year and a half from the time of the bond election.
That's what I was
At
thinking.
least.
So we're talking 2.5 years from start to finish. So yeah, you have to keep that in mind. And so, what data, I guess, are we gonna use to know that when is the right time to start talking about a bond? Because we think that the enrollment's going up. There needs to be some kind of data trend, I think, that we have to be able to look at, and,
Can you do like an average over 3 years, any given 3 years, to find out what that average base is, because it kind of fluctuates up and down?
For
yeah.
enrollment, I run that. It's part of the reports they run.
I was gonna say, you can look at the state data too, they have on their site.
I have
By building
a
enrollment
bandit.
at the ADA.
Yeah, Jessica can do like a 5-year projection.
Mine goes back 3 years and then projects out 5, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
'cause
that
the
could be the
growth
information.
rate isn't an exact match with the enrollment rate, because we're seeing, even though we see the population of City of Rathdrum as an example grow at 5%, we're not necessarily seeing a 5% enrollment like in elementary schools.
No, that's going down.
Yeah,
It's going the
so
wrong direction.
it's really hard to even just project, okay, well, our population's increasing, therefore our school growth will increase, and that's not happening.
You know.
Well, and if you look at this, the other piece of data that we could look at is the live birth data at the state level, and that also is dropping. So those numbers are going down, they're not going up. We have this, what are we, Gen Z now that are old
Well,
enough
you're
to
about
have
to have
babies?
the COVID babies start turning 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
We didn't
you're about
even
to hit that.
Yeah, we didn't even see a big
wall.
bump for COVID babies. We thought we would.
Well, you hit a low spot during 2020, 21.
Mm-hmm.
These people pull.
And those are just now turning kindergarten this coming school year.
Yeah. But even just at the state level over the last, even since COVID, those numbers are going down, because when you talk to our Gen Z people, a lot of them are saying, I don't even know if I want to have kids, and if I do, it's way out there. And then there's also a percentage of them who are having babies when they're 19. They're getting married right out of high school and they're having babies. So there is that small population, but at the state level, what we're seeing is the live birth data is going the wrong way for us. So that all just needs to be part of, what we're looking at as we're thinking about, our 5-year plan.
Can you bring that back, that enrollment sheet?
Yeah.
Is there any way to know how many families from that, the new Lancaster, or the new like Hayden Canyon area, how many families, kids might have already transferred out of Lakeland School District?
Right now I don't think there are a lot of houses out there yet, and there is the Hayden Canyon Charter School that's
Yeah.
right in there. I know they have 530 kids enrolled. I don't know what percentage
I
of them.
think their
is
enrollment's
Lakeland.
going down because there's some people that aren't super happy out there.
Yeah, we actually had heard a rumor that they were going to be closing, but I asked Rebecca to call the director and verify that, and he said it's a rumor, so.
Yeah, I had heard that too, but, so we don't know how many from that area out there, because there's a fair amount of new houses out there, but how many of those kids are going elsewhere?
Do you know, Jake or
No.
Jessica, are we picking any kids up from the Hayden Canyon area?
On the south side of Lancaster, we are.
Are they elementary or are they
The
secondary?
majority of this school year, we get 2 kids. They're about 5 minutes late for the bus every day, and Easter waits for them. Found out.
Elementary
on the drive
kids?
along. Yep, little kindergartners.
No secondary?
It's interesting because what we're seeing throughout the city, and I don't know about Athol, but we're seeing more mature families moving into Rathdrum. We're not seeing a lot of young families because of the pricing.
Yep.
The pricing just isn't affordable for startup families.
Well, maybe if we go into a recession, the housing prices will drop and people will be able to afford it.
Lisa, the reason I asked you to bring that back up is, you know, if you look at these totals right now, the only real pressure point we have, which is still within reason, is Lakeland High School.
Yeah, their max functional capacity is 900.
Yeah, so they're kind of bumping up against that. The rest of those, you all have basically room.
Lakeland Middle School numbers are high. If you
We had 1,000 kids in there at one time.
No, I'm not talking about space-wise, I'm just, if you go back to what the strategic plan says as far as numbers, but that's not a building issue, that's just an attendance number issue.
So, you know, from that standpoint, in the near term, I think that's the only one that really has to have a little bit of concentration on it to figure out, you know, what to do. If that bumps up over 900 or 950 or reaches to 1,000, you know, something's got to give somewhere. That may be an adjustment in attendance boundaries to get some of those kids to go north.
Right, which would help both middle and high school.
So if you were to shift that zone boundary, which is what?
Timberlake's maximum functional capacity, I think, is maybe 600. And that would be
600?
Maybe 600.
Like maybe 600.
Yeah, I'm gonna put
They're
all
pretty
of them
close
in the
to
gym.
them.
Timberlake High School's functional capacity is 788,
What?
based on a document that I just found from Brian from
Oh,
2022.
Hey, can you share
Can you-
that?
yeah, so
I'm
we
working-
all have it?
I'm
Yeah.
4 million.
Well, so I can link it into the agenda and then everybody will have access to it, but that would be awesome. So it's almost 800.
So
So
we
they
got
have
plenty of room.
room. The issue, if nothing changes with kind of the types of families that are moving in here and then just the live birth rate at the state level, we're going to start seeing the numbers at the middle and high school levels going down because we aren't bringing the little people in to support those numbers. So Lakeland High School for the last 3 years has started the year right around 900, and then as they do every year, we lose a few kids and they kind of trickle down. So
Is that because of moving, or what is the?
some of them move, some of them decide they want to go online, and so they'll either go to Mountain View or they'll go to Bridge Academy, just
Different styles.
Yep. So,
Yeah, even if you look down the line at the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade enrollments at Lakeland Middle School, you got one little bubble at 230, but it's not very different from the senior class that's going out now.
exactly.
So you're only going to change 4 students there. So, and if you look
And
farther down the line,
same for
what
Timberlake.
Lisa is saying is correct, and that is that secondary enrollment will tend to trend downward as time goes along. So some of what we're seeing right now as a pinch may dissipate, assuming something strange doesn't happen, which it would cause a big influx of students. But we don't know of anything on the horizon that would do that.
It'd have to be house prices dropping in
Yeah.
order for that to happen.
Cuts to Social Security.
Well, I don't,
We have a lot of retired old people out here.
yeah, but that doesn't affect the
Compromise.
students. That's
No, but you have a lot of houses then.
come onto the market.
Mhm.
That's what drives prices high. There's no market. Even if we had an economic crash, the market's still high because
Everybody
What are you
wants to
gonna buy?
move here.
Yeah, there's 5 houses to compete over.
So I was just trying to find out what Kootenai County's birth statistics are, because you say Idaho birth statistics, but how many of babies are we having in Kootenai County in the last couple of years versus all of Idaho, because different places are going to have a higher number of babies. So I don't know how to look up to see what Kootenai County's birth rate
Did you
was.
try Googling it?
I'll try.
Yeah, I Googled Kootenai County birth rate and I didn't get anything. It just took me to,
I might be able to find something on the census data.
yeah, it'd be interesting to know what just the Kootenai County birth rate is, because you can't really go by Idaho birth rate because,
Yeah, we're just looking at,
Yeah.
I mean, it's across the whole state though,
Yeah.
that the whole state is seeing the elementary numbers going down.
Mhm.
So, to your point, Bob, Timberlake High School's in the same boat. They've got 130 graduating seniors and they're bringing in 135 freshmen. It's 5 student
Yeah.
difference.
The other thing that's interesting, if you look at the kindergarten and first grade enrollments, 272, 284, that first grade enrollment is 100 less than fifth grade. You know, so that shows you what that trend line looks like.
For the first time in the 31 years that Betty Kiefer has been open, they only have 2 sections of kindergarten.
Kindergarten.
They've always had 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Twin Lakes only has 1,
Twin.
Apple has 2, 1 at 16, 1 at 17.
yeah, our numbers are just tiny.
So going the other way though, so we're considering like trend growth to build a new school. But as our population decreases, especially elementary, and the population's getting smaller, our funding is gonna go down from the state.
Mhm.
So at what point do we have 6 elementary schools in a row we're encumbered with facility or staff to just basically run the facilities?
And the finances, because the state doesn't fund us based on the number of schools we have, they fund us based on the kids, so.
And whether or not they're attending school.
That's part of this conversation. I mean, there could be a recommendation from our group that if we have elementary schools that are dropping below, I don't know what the magic number would be, but from a fiscally conservative standpoint, you know, for sure if you have fewer than 200 kids in a building, it's gonna cost us a lot more to run that school than what we're gonna get to do it. So that could be part of the recommendation, is that we monitor enrollment.
I think depending on what the levy does too, because now with this bill saying, oh, you get, I don't know, $3,000 or $5,000 to send your kid to.
5,000.
Yeah, per child to send them to private school. If the levy doesn't pass and parents are all upset about stuff, their kids could get pulled from public to go to private, which then is gonna decrease our
Do
numbers.
we have any new private schools being built?
There's some in Bonner
across the
County
area?
that I've
There's-
seen variances on for Bonner County, but I would say I'm not as concerned about kids being pulled at this moment to go to a private school because it's a tax credit. They would have to pay upfront for everything and then get reimbursed through the tax, through their taxes. It is a capped tax credit, which is not normal in Idaho state history. We don't typically cap tax credits, but it's capped at 50 million. There's a lawsuit that's been filed to not cap it. The state's estimating that if it's not capped, it could be up to 400 million that they would be on the hook for.
Wow.
So it'll be
Where that
interesting.
money will come from.
Well, and
That's what
the
we have.
50 million, they don't know where that money's coming from yet either, because
Exactly.
they're looking at taking from the highway funding sources to pay for it right now.
From my understanding from the conference that I attended last week, they came in during the middle of the highway funding budget and said, hold on, we need to find 50 million because we just did this and we forgot to put it in as a line item. So, that happens. I don't wanna be that person that made that mistake, but it happens. So as far as enrollment projections, I think where we'll lose is if people do open enrollment and go to another district, or if they decide to start homeschooling, because that's potentially an option for people, especially if they're right on that median of, does it make sense to have someone work or stay home with the kids kind of thing. But again, it's a tax credit, so they're not going to see the value, the benefit of it until they file their taxes the following year.
Right.
It is retroactive to January 1st of 2024 or 25?
Right.
25, yeah, so it's retroactive to 25. So it'll be this full calendar year.
And the
not school year.
homeschool, for the homeschool people, the tax credit can only be used to, like, they're gonna have to, I don't know if they'll have to provide receipts for the tax credit, but it can be used for curriculum, field trips, but it can't just be used to pay mom to stay home with the
Right,
kids, kind of
exactly.
thing.
So it's,
But if it stays capped, there's already 16,000 private school students in Idaho, right? It's the 50 million's gone.
it's gone, yeah, very, very quickly.
Yeah,
It
so
just
it's,
scratches.
a lot of
So-
people are calling it the welfare system for the wealthy, because it's the people who are already paying for private school are gonna be the ones who are gonna be able to access the tax credit for it.
A lottery system or how they're gonna.
I'm not really sure if it's a first come, first serve, because you file your taxes first, you could get to have it. I'm not sure how they're doing it, which is why I think that they're arguing that it shouldn't be capped, because really, if it's capped, how do you fairly and equitably
Well,
spend those
at one
funds?
point, they talked about an application and it was gonna go to the
Yeah.
people who needed it the most, but if you're only giving them 5,000 and it costs 10,000 to go, and I'm living at the poverty level, I don't have another 5,000 to put toward that, to get the 5,000 so my kids can go, or my child, one child can go.
It'll be interesting to see how many, at the start of next year, how many private schools up their annual cost.
They already have. They've already started upping their annual cost.
It'll
so
just
as
be
soon as the law
interesting to
passed,
see
they
how
started upping
many-
their tuition for the next
Right.
year.
How many, increase their,
If the levy doesn't pass, I think the biggest hit to enrollment is going to be kids who leave Lakeland to go to districts where athletics are funded on in a stable way. And that's not just gonna be high school, that's gonna be middle school kids who wanna go play high school, it's gonna be kids in elementary who are already playing club sports who wanna go somewhere where they're gonna be able to play. I think that will be the hit that we will see.
Do the other districts have that space to take on a fair amount of kids?
They do.
Well, they'll make space because
Yep.
they're gonna get funding. for
Additional
those kids.
ADA,
Mhm.
you will make space.
Yeah.
We've benefited from that even in our own district. My projection for enrollment was off, which I'm very happy that it was off, but we benefited from West Bonner County. We do have a lot of kids that have come here from open enrollment from West Bonner County because their district is in turmoil. It really truly is. They do not have sports, they do not have funding, so they are here because that's what they value, that's what they want out of their experience.
So there are a lot of what ifs, obviously, and no crystal ball.
Makes projections so fun.
Yeah. But, so I do think that there are two sides of what we're recommending to the board. If the district starts to grow, where is the best place to start looking to build a school? And what is our projection for that? Knowing that we have all of that land out at Hayden Canyon, and I can't remember now, then it's a huge number of homes that are going in out there. I can't remember. Jessica, do you remember how many homes are going out there?
For Hayden Canyon,
Mhm.
give me 1 second, I can tell you.
And then we have the subdivision, or the request to Rathdrum for, I think it's 400 homes on the corner of Bakel, the southeast corner of Bakel and Meyer.
Right.
So south of the roundabout, just north of Quail Ridge area. And then we just met with another group who was they're putting homes in on Nagel.
Bakel, north of Bakel. Oh, wait a
No,
second. Which one?
over like Radcliffe, just north of Radiant Lake.
So that's,
Like
that
Nagel and
is
Thayer,
Bakel.
right?
Bakel, over by the Silverado Apartments are looking at an annexation.
No, not that one. That's not the one that.
There's no subdivision north of Nagel by Radiant Lake other than that one.
Isn't that where they
They're
said?
doing dirt work out there or
Yeah,
something.
that's them. They're trying to get, I think that's the one that came and talked to us and said that they're going to planning and zoning because they're asking for that to be zoned differently so that they can put homes in that area.
Maybe it's commercial right now.
Yeah, so they came to talk to us about a letter.
North of Nagel, that was gonna be an industrial subdivision. That already came in front of city council to get rezoned for residential and got denied.
Right, and they're coming back.
Oh, well, I didn't know that one. That's
Yeah,
news to
they're
me.
being smart and they're coming to us before they come to you,
Uh,
cause they wanna come with
'Cause they're
letters
building
from
a road
us
right
to you.
here.
Cause I know that there's an annexation of 20 acres north of Bakel Road that said that they were coming to you guys as well.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong and maybe that's,
I have the papers on
oh
my
no,
desk.
you're right, I'm sorry, you're right. It's on Bakel, and it's not, but it wasn't,
It's an annexation and a zone.
it's
It's-
a little square that is surrounded by city, yeah, okay, so
Yep.
you're right.
That's the one on Bakel, so that's, they have 20 acres, a little square area that wasn't incorporated, and they're asking to be
And
incorporated.
everything
into the
around
city
it is
limits.
incorporated in the city, and they literally have this little island that's not, that, it makes no sense.
We
to
have
not annex
about
that.
4 or 5 of
Susie
those,
Moore's
but yeah. I think so.
Yeah.
So,
Let me pull up a little map.
that was gonna be small,
Yeah, it wouldn't be a lot.
starter type homes, and so when they came and said, we'll be able to help you with your enrollment, and I said, well, how much is your small starter home gonna cost? And they were like, oh, $400, $450, and I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's not helping.
Susan Moore.
Yeah, that's not gonna help us with kids, those aren't the people who are coming for that.
So if elementary enrollment is going down, that means over the next few
Eventually,
years,
the secondary will.
secondary is gonna be going down as well.
So should
Unless
we
we
even be
continue to
looking?
have the established families move into the city.
Well, and it's hard to know in 5 years what the economy's gonna do, what the housing market's going to do, so I think we need to have almost like an if this, then that kind of a thing, so if enrollment starts to go up and that, because people can afford housing or whatever, then this is what we would recommend, whatever this is. If enrollment continues to decline, then we recommend that the district do this so that we are being as fiscally conservative as we need to be to make sure we're making the best use of the dollars that we get from the state.
Yeah.
So, if there are markers right there in the middle of the table, and we have that whiteboard, this one, and that is a whiteboard also. If people want to kind of group up in groups of 3 and kind of just start to brainstorm some of what we talked about. The other part of the brainstorm also needs to include just plans for, our buildings are getting older, so if we're going to continue to use Mountain View, for example, that building, what do we need to put into Mountain View to continue to have that be a building where kids can go and learn well? So thinking about just some of our facilities. We do have the 18 million that Jessica's gonna ask the board to schedule a workshop to talk about from the state, which it's all we get for the next 10 years for facilities from the state.
Potentially.
Well, at least through that bond, for the modernization part. And so there could be a little bit more coming our way, but we'll wait and see. But that's some of that is, we had to put all that information into that big spreadsheet for the 10-year plan for the state, and so it came back and said, electrical for our oldest buildings and HVAC for our oldest buildings need to be the top 2 priorities for us.
Electrical, HVAC, and then fire suppression.
Yep.
Is ridiculously expensive.
Yeah.
Do we know
Especially
how
a
much?
retrofit.
It's the age of the buildings. Like average, like 30.
Bob could rattle that off. Athol, Spirit Lake, Lakeland Middle School, and John Brown were all built in the 60s, right?
Don't have any other.
John Brown was built in the 60s, the original part, and then added on to in the 70s and added on to in the 80s. And Spirit Lake and Athol were originally built, late 70s.
They were in the 70s, I thought they were in the 60s.
Do you want me to put the year the buildings were built in with
Yep.
everything?
Yep.
Athol was 68, Spirit Lake was 68, Garwood 91.
Both Spirit Lake and Athol, the core that was originally built was
Was
very
very
small.
tiny. Athol was
Athol
like
was
3
a
classrooms.
three-room school
Yeah.
when it was originally built. You know, now it'll have 400 or 500 kids. So it's been added on to, I think, 4 times, something like that. over the
Which
years.
one?
Athol Elementary.
1, 2,
Yeah,
3,
the-
4, 5, 6, 7 times.
Wow.
Just a
I
couple.
just, I
I lost
literally,
track.
last October, I had to sit down and figure out all the different phases of our buildings because we had to turn it into the state, so.
For the 10-year plan. Lakeland Middle School also was, the original part
The
was in the
original
60s.
was built, same time John Brown.
Okay.
They were both built at the same time, the original part. But of course, that's been added on to
Right.
a number of times as well.
And that also makes retrofitting electrical and all that stuff more challenging because
Depending on the code, you might have to replace it all.
Yes, we're going to have to replace it all. Yeah, so we may not be able to, I mean, I don't, and I have
You'll
no
eat up your
idea.
10 million in that in a heartbeat.
18 million.
18 million, yeah, you'll eat it up.
That's what Jessica's been saying.
Yeah, we won't be able to even touch probably just the electrical in those 4 buildings, but that's what we're doing.
Electricals and fire.
I think you can.
And phone, yeah.
Each RTU for the heating is like 30 grand. So if you had to replace those are your biggest ticket. If you had to redo all new electrical, I mean, you're probably only not even a mil per school.
It's not just as cut and dry as just the electrical though, cause we're looking at having to redo like ceiling panels and stuff like that as you pull things in. So I'm not looking at just the cost of having electrical replaced, it's the minor restoration of the building that takes place with that changeover too. So it's gonna, I think we're thinking about 1.5 for Lakeland Middle School.
Just for the electrical. And that includes adding electrical capabilities,
Because
right?
we're out of the ability to add any electrical service to Lakeland Middle School. In fact, they have a brand new double barrel frozen yogurt machine for the school lunches and they cannot plug it in. There's nowhere to plug it in.
Because we're out of power.
Yeah, panels are maxed out. Well, as long as you can prove that you're upsizing and stuff, you can just contact Kootenai Electric or Vista. They should be able to add in their pole or something, you can drop it on the service.
We can look into that.
Because they are responsible up to the meter, so.
Yeah, that will all be part of that work, so. Okay, any questions? I think, did you add links to this document? Do you want me to share this document so you can put the links in?
I'm working on it. I'm just finishing formatting. You add more stuff to it now, so.
But I'm just gonna share it with you so you can add to it. So she'll put in, maximum functional capacity for each building, so you can look at that document. That'll all be linked here, so. Okay, so, any questions about what our task is for tonight? And this is just brainstorming. Once you guys have your brainstorms up, we'll just kind of share out and talk about what makes the most sense and start to kind of craft.
Do you want to stop at 6:45? We're done at 7, just so
Yeah.
we're
And then we can come
protecting
back.
people's time.
Yep, then we'll come back and kind of share out and capture the
So
notes.
everybody has a couple minutes. Okay.
Okay, so, grab a marker and Leon can help if you have any questions about housing in the Rathdrum community. Lori can help if you have questions about anything up in Athol.
So we can be floaters that way if
Mhm.
there's any questions.
Yep.
Leon, what are they putting in down on Meyer where that lot that finally sold just south of Wyoming? Do you know what's going in down there? They're like clearing land.
They're clearing land, but they're gonna be coming for an annexation to do housing, but large lot housing is what they've said
Because it's just
to
that
us.
one field that they've now
Oh, are you talking,
Where the sheep used to be and stuff, right on the
oh,
other
yeah,
south
on
of-
the south of Wyoming,
Yeah.
on the west side.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're looking at coming in for an annexation and doing large lot subdivisions.
Because I've been for sale for a long time, and they started clearing one part of that lot.
Yeah, so I don't know what they're doing right now. It's outside of city limits, so,
Yep.
but I do know that they have come and talked to us about annexation.
And I noticed they're starting to put roads in on the east side of
Yes.
Meyer.
On the
south
north
it.
of Wyoming, south of the railroad tracks.
Mhm.
Yep, that's a subdivision that was approved years ago.
Mhm.
Is it on the west side of Meyer or the east side of Meyer?
The west side
So that's
of,
Betty
no,
Keith's
east
house.
side of Meyer,
Oh.
south of the railroad tracks.
That's your zone.
Yeah,
They
and
started putting roads in there.
I think the first phase is 96 homes, and they'll be putting in the roads and stuff like that to this year, and then starting construction on housing next year.
Okay.
Is there a mirrored subdivision across the street from that?
Yeah, kinda, sorta, yeah.
That, and that's.
Lisa,
That's what
do we have an
John
inventory of subdivisions that are either in progress or are in progress of being annexed or that sort of thing?
In the next 5 years.
The number of lots.
I've got it all up here, Bob.
Is there a way that you could give us a map of
Yeah.
just like, here's the plots of like
So-
strategically
The
in the district?
reason I asked that question is, we've got some fairly large new subdivisions out here. And we know from our own data how many kids are coming out of those. So if you got 100 homes, but you're only getting 30 kids out of that 100 homes, you can extrapolate that to the next subdivision, assuming it's the same caliber subdivision. That gives you some projection into the future, not necessarily,
So at least we have a
Guaranteed.
rough projection for sure.
yeah.
But if we could have it like on a map, just so we're looking at a granular, like here's all the plots that are coming and like with the dates of like estimated people in homes coming to the district in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years.
Well, I just asked that question from our planning department because some of the areas have preliminary plats, some don't. They're just kind of like big pieces of land. But of the preliminary plats to final plat that haven't built homes yet, we've got 640 residential lots with apartments and condos. We've got 623 units, but that's probably a 5 to 10 year growth plan.
Totaling 1,200 roughly.
1,200 units.
Yeah, but just like, I just clicked back to look at Betty Kiefer's attendance, which is 370 this year, and they don't have 6th grade anymore, which we had when I was there, and we were at 550. But if you've driven out there and looked at all of the houses that have been built around Betty Kiefer, there are no kids really that are coming from that.
And that's kind of my point, is it's really hard to get a handle on it unless you take what current data we have based on the most recent occupied homes and
Right,
then
'cause
extrapolate
built
that into the.
Yeah.
Lots aren't indicative of kids right now. I mean,
No,
it's-
they're not. And
Even the small little starter home lots are not indicative of little kids. They might have a couple
even the
middle school
apartments, you take
kids.
Corbin Crossing, for example, that's got
Yeah.
a large
Oh,
number of
so
units,
many.
and how many kids that are actually coming out of Corbin Crossing is
We don't even have a
minimal.
full bus
Handful
coming
of
out of there,
kids.
do we?
No.
Yeah.
We've
So-
got maybe like 5, 6 kids each time.
Out
so
of-
they're maybe.
How many there are 22 buildings there with,
With 12 in each one.
yeah, and we have 5 kids,
Yeah,
and those are apartments.
yeah.
And the apartments that were gonna go in Brookshire South, just north of the railroad tracks off of Meyer Road, they've decided to change those. They were allowed 250 units. They're now turning them into townhomes, and there'll only be 155 units in those.
What will, I mean, do we have rent?
We don't
We
know
have
those
total-
yet.
you don't
We don't
know
know
that.
those.
That'd
City
probably be
doesn't
more
get into
expensive
those.
though, cause like the townhomes over off of Coeur d'Alene are quite a bit more than your traditional apartment.
Yeah.
Are any of the apartments coming like low income,
No.
or are they all over 2,000 a month?
They're all over 2,000 a month that
2,500.
we've heard, because we don't ask for their rental prices, but
Yeah.
just from hearing
Word of
around
mouth.
town, word of mouth, everything's 2,000 or more.
How can anyone afford that? I mean, my son just bought a house just down the road from us, and they're on a 1/3 acre lot, and they're $2,500 a month just for their house payment. I can't imagine people paying that for a rental.
No, and what we're seeing in some of the Corbin Crossing apartments is multiple single individuals,
20
almost like
somethings.
dorm units, where there might be a 3-bedroom apartment.
And they're
So
sharing.
you've got 3 singles that are sharing it so that they can afford the rent. Cause that drives it down to, $700
There's a lot of
a piece.
multi-generational homes too.
Yes, yeah.
Yep.
And so
We'll
we're
probably
seeing
be
transitions into
multi-generational
that.
for a while.
And it used to be that we could say there's 2.8 residents per home. That's what it used to be as our normal, which meant that there's always a kid involved when you're building a house. There was at least one child that was involved with every single house. We're not seeing that at all. We're seeing seniors, we're seeing adult children living with seniors, just the whole package. I mean, it's just really
Different
weird. It's
lifestyle,
not
yeah,
the,
different
it's not the
lifestyle.
norm.
Yeah.
Well, we know that in our proof of residency we have to do every year. We have probably 200 families that live together with their parents.
Yeah, we
And
had our
grandkids.
kids living out of our basement for a while,
Yeah.
just so that they could find some place to live.
So, with the developers' behavior, like the economy slows down a little bit, are we expecting them to build and still see people migrate to the area? Or
Oh,
are we
you
expecting
bet.
them to slow down?
We're not seeing, the people moving here aren't moving here because they've got a job here. They're moving here because they want to get out of wherever they're at.
A lot of them are retiring.
Yeah.
So we'd expect no kids though.
We moved.
Yeah,
That migration.
that's what we're seeing, and I think that's also indicative of what you're seeing in the vote results of levies and stuff like that, because it used to be you had a majority of people moving in with young families. This is startup family
Yeah,
area.
we used to be a bedroom community for Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, and Spokane, where people would come out here and be able to buy a home for $150,000 to $175,000, a little starter home, and raise their family out here and be able to go to their jobs, and that's
And we're not
not the case
seeing that anymore, because the cheapest house you can buy is around $400,000 to $450,000, and no startup family can afford that.
And when I'm talking to people just out in the grocery store or whatever, I say, well, what moved you here? And it's like, I came so I could be by my grandkids. And I'm like, yep, that's us. We moved here because our kids were here.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. And we see a lot of people moving here to get away from the politics of where they were coming from. And they want a different lifestyle than what they had. And they sell their home wherever they're at, and it's more than enough money to even buy the $450,000 home. They'll pay extra. And that's what drove up our prices in
There was a
2020
bidding- there was
is
a bidding war.
the bidding wars. And once you can charge that price, you're gonna keep charging that price.
Don't you feel like that's kind of settled down a little? Or no?
It has.
Yeah.
We've seen some reductions and some stabilization of those, but they're nowhere near. When I moved here 9 years ago, you had startup homes at around $200,000 to $250,000. You'd have to have a major cut. You know how many people would be upside down in their homes
Mhm.
if the prices went back to that? And
Well, if we don't.
That's
pass that
hard.
levy, that could happen.
it did in 2006. So if we have that recession, it could happen.
Well, we can't solve all the world's problems, but we can
We have
start.
about 20 minutes.
We can start creating a plan for the district to kind of be a little bit forward thinking, so.
Is it necessary for us to take a look at another kind of potential, instead of just growth or decrease? Population shift is something that we've talked about a lot in these past meetings. just the fact that like we're seeing a lot of growth in Rathdrum and in North Hayden, and growth in Apple and Spirit Lake, but not nearly to the volume that we're seeing it down
Right
here.
now, we're just talking specifically facilities, then the next part will be like a 5 to 10 year plan as far as our attendance
Okay.
zones and how in those different scenarios we identify how we might need to make some changes. Because if we continue to decline and we do have to close schools, what does that look like?
What does the criteria look like?
Yeah.
Okay.
If we grow, what does that look like? It would be nice if part of, as we're talking about that, is if we could look at the areas that are growing. Like, it makes sense in my very simple brain when it comes to transportation to look at the Hayden Canyon houses right there off of 95. And instead of busing those kids to Garwood where they keep growing, does it make sense to bus them north, just straight up 95 to Apple, and start to move some of the Garwood pressure north a little bit?
And if you were to find land and build one in that Hayden area, what kind of growth would you need in elementary schools? Because it doesn't necessarily, the way we're going right now, even though that's a desire to have some of those go into a local school, if we're continuing to decline in enrollment, it doesn't make any sense to build another school.
No. Mm-mm. Nope. That would only happen if we had like a big boom out there and all the houses they build in Hayden Canyon came with
Cheap with kids.
So,
Okay.
okay, let's take the next 15 minutes to just kind of start brainstorming. And we don't have a lot of time, so maybe we just start with if our enrollment continues to decrease, which is kind of where we are with our economy and the housing market and such. If that's the case, then what would our recommendation be? Let's start there, I guess, so we're all working kind of on the same thing. Okay.
Okay.
You writing?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Picked up a little
Go for it.
Grab a couple to be safe. Just saying.
Pretty colors.
You can never predict that. Sure, if you have pretty handwriting. It's better than mine.
I know, I always feel naughty doing a lot of
Alright, so we decrease.
Yes.
That's why I thought you'd be glad.
If we decrease, I think we should close the girls' school. Or repurposing the school. So closing.
Yeah, it's our grade ones. I'm working on updating it. So this information is all correct. I just need to enter this information in the rest of the package.
I think probably moving.
There's a lot of Excel that's very similar. It just doesn't, the basics are similar. So the formulas are similar, but then Excel just has so many more capabilities. So I just,
It makes sense to me.
You don't find this necessary right now, but I was gonna try and.
So then the locations are in high school?
But this is your functional capacity.
I guess
yeah, that's
156.
and by rolling
You're right.
So basically what all this spreadsheet takes where we're at now is my grade band and it'll automatically
So
When we're
should be based on the times. Based on their priorities.
Go into that
So
school
the entire 5 years
in the summer, and nobody's around, by yourself.
Are you talking about moving out?
Like if we close and repurpose like one of the elementary schools that enrollment continues
Oh,
to
okay.
dwindle, then maybe use that school for the mountain
So it doesn't
kids.
matter which one, just whichever.
Right,
Whichever
yeah,
one.
yeah. Just repurpose. It's probably cheaper than trying to fix Mountain
It looks better visually
Update it.
and it just looks everything.
How long has
So
that
it
been?
actually
You've
will
got the
judge my
old
age.
stories of that.
My grandpa graduated.
Are we going
Yeah.
to-
I haven't been to You gotta give me time. I just started working tonight, so.
Whatever school we move Mountain View to would probably be able to hold the middle school too, Mountain View Middle.
Yep, so they're all in one, instead of the two separate buildings.
Yep.
That's what we talked about was repurposing.
Yeah. I didn't realize
Because
that
I could give up
quite a bit of our
high
elementary
school
enrollment was down that low.
because it's
Like
not.
Twin Lakes is not the lowest school, well, I mean, it is the lowest, but there's some others that
I
are
think they
pretty
talked
close to it
about,
now.
it's a possibility, but it's also, you gotta make it for every single
For the
school.
foreseeable future.
But-
Yeah, we talked, the thing with John Brown is
It's
the fact that we
$18 million
don't use it as a
to do
school
the
anymore.
necessary upgrades in all of our existing buildings.
Ordinance that's on was donated to
So, here's another question though, if this is the goal,
Then they
to,
donated it to the
if
school
you
district
repurpose
and
a
then
school
back in the
and
60s.
move Mountain View in it, would you wanna spend that $18 million in that overall?
Sure.
No.
I think that's
Just
struggle
repurpose
and tug of
it,
war.
like
And so the decision was made that
Yeah.
Just-
that would allow us.
that would be
House
your
those children.
And as long as
first one that
feel like
would
we
disappear,
continue
if it was
to-
everyone.
And that's kinda more like near future decision.
Yeah, I maybe
need to
write that one down.
different color.
They could maybe.
She's all excited about this right now.
Right. There's, yeah, we don't want to give it to the city, so.
But the three elementary schools shrinking are Twin Lakes.
They stay some level of decline.
They're actually
Mhm.
five, well, John Brown is probably.
Like if they
staying
become
to be adjusted
lower
to
than
their
200 per school or
But we're
whatever.
gonna see them start
for their
to
enrollment.
decrease.
For all of them.
Which John Brown's a walking school.
Cause it wouldn't just be.
Well,
some.
we have some
Because
kids
you'd want
between
to-
bus two
you'd
now.
have
Well,
to
that's
be
the
able to
question, and
redistribute,
since we're
like,
starting
Try to
to,
get kids to the school because it was.
and as we're, I mean, let's see how May goes, but every year,
Is there a
or every
downside
2
to
years,
busing that to
we're
do
gonna have to
routes
keep
to-
cutting back. That
Well,
might
we
be a
could-
way
Twin Lakes
We could
Elementary.
close this
back
as an elementary
too
school.
financially.
And move
Yeah, I
Mountain
mean,
View over,
that's
that's
gonna
what we
be
talked about,
a
as long
really
as it's
tough
still
part
school, we can
is
still use it.
just
And
figuring
then,
that out.
You gotta figure out where the trigger
Like
points
the
are.
technology
Yeah.
program.
Because we're still seeing growth in Garwood just because of
Yes.
boundaries. So there's
Space
also
for the food service.
the increased need to reallocate students in their boardroom lines.
Yeah.
And that,
Yes.
that decrease too, because you can't just keep stuffing more kids in Garwood.
That actually
There's a lot of
probably before we do that.
Right.
Yeah, the purples are gonna be more near future.
We're cleaning up the gap. in
So
there.
we could write 1, 2,
Like our, put them in order.
yeah.
Yeah, these are kind of all pretty closely. Really close together, but. Yeah, because when we look at how we get funded from the city, we already, part of the money is, just in the name of that, because we have elementary schools that also have big, so.
Well, that's a good point.
Put a sweet brewery in there with pizza.
And you could still have small,
But, you know, like.
small.
And Rebecca's gonna go run it.
Prove that.
Because of where it's located.
It's a great location for something downtown.
And our salaries are lower, like some of our competing school districts. I think we have more staff too.
If Mountain came this way, then we were saying like you do
Schools,
technology, they can
we
run
run
over
to,
here.
like optimizing class size, like kindergarten classes. We
Hold on,
could-
it would be great if you took Mountain View, for example, even if
They're all in one school,
and you had.
but because they're all in separate schools,
Move
they're
things
things
around,
like.
keep
16.
ownership. You could rent it, but keep
Which also
ownership
creates
of
some
it, so that
priority
if
amongst our
enrollment
staff, so
ever
like
started
look
to
at,
increase
at,
again, that you
Twin Lakes,
could
for
maybe
example,
set
right now,
for
so
some.
they only have one kindergarten class, they have
Right.
23 kids in it. And then you have other schools where they have 15.
It would.
So you've got.
Kinds of uses.
You have
Exactly.
and then
Maybe
you have this,
You're
you
having
have
like
that.
all of it.
You're always gonna have bubbles, but the
facilities.
longer we keep 6
So you can
schools
still use some of our buildings
not
for
really
that
kids
is.
in it,
That's
then
okay.
we're gonna.
Our long range plans for the city is
And it does
hopefully
get,
within 5 to 10 years
where
to
everyone
correct
knows that they keep
That would be amazing.
So we're trying to figure out right now, we got the money right now to
What I hear you
build city
saying
hall.
is you want to buy that land.
we're gonna do it every year.
No, we already have some.
What did you want that to do?
But it's just because
trying to figure out how to rebuild the fund balance we currently have so we can build the rest.
It was voted down, wasn't it, at the board level about having a
I think
school
that,
specific
well, cause
for
we
sped
talked
costs.
about possibly repurposing the school, and it was the board that didn't really wanna do that, right? Or
What?
There's
What?
Yeah.
It's the
They
change.
love their changes are, they also love their small school and kids are so together and feeling like the downside
It will
because
be
of.
very traumatic.
Well, and I think the other piece that people don't program like the downside of doing that, like with the fiscal makes sense, but because geographically we're so spread out.
So we, I mean, we're still
It's
talking about potentially having.
Sure, I mean, there's probably a really strategic way to maybe minimize that, but
Yeah,
otherwise.
shutting down Twin makes sense to me.
But it's.
Just because of the
My thought process
strategic
is,
Right.
how many parents do we
Yeah,
have
it
that?
is.
And so you're gonna spend all this time on HVAC and
It seems like there's so
And
much.
John Brown, John Brown has twice as
But
many.
it's not that it was
It's just a lot of
used,
Right,
that's
that's
right,
right.
it's repurposed.
Are you,
But
are you able to
I think that
force
parents
all
are
the
gonna be
kids to relocate, or are you just
really
not
big
worried?
awakening state if this levy does not pass,
So you
and
still have some.
our hand is forced to do
Yes.
that.
Well, and
We
it's
literally
1,000%
cannot
up to
afford
the parent.
to run 6 elementary schools with 300
If
kids.
the program is in the, if the program is in the building and they want to do the program, then that's where this board has to go. They don't get to tell us what to work with.
Right, but if they choose not to
Well, I
participate
think
in the
that's true.
program.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you gotta,
No, not
do a
if that's
bad
what
thing,
programs, they can stay in the
that's
house.
the
I
least
feel like
bad.
3 of them in multiple board meetings have said absolutely
They don't get to
not.
tell us.
Yeah.
So I feel like they have talked
Where
about,
the program is where the
we will,
program is.
but
But
we'll go to 4 days before we
Mhm.
decide
If
to
we
do
can-
this, we
Yeah.
will cut before we decide, like,
Yeah.
they do not want to,
And it would
because
be,
the
it would
feedback
not
from
be
parents has
you go
been
there,
absolutely
you're there,
not.
Yeah.
When I lived down in the Boise area, what Boise with their
That's why
program, they
that's-
were expanding,
They get
but their
paid.
elementary schools in the downtown area,
And
which
go
was a
in.
poor thing like
and
John
show
Brown.
the TV and show
They were
activities
continually losing
and
enrollment because the
aesthetic
growth
and still
happened
manage
outside
my
and those
emotions,
homes
'cause
were
that's what it
converted
is, they
either
can't
from
regulate their emotions when they're
2
alone.
senior living homes to tearing them down
And
and
then
building
you
businesses.
continue,
And they just didn't
doing
have the
that, and then
population
the
in
team
the
feels like
downtown
they're ready to
area
go back to
to
their own school and
support
be
the
successful.
school.
Mhm.
And so
In
they
a special
ended up
ed setting,
having to
but
shut
not
down some of
one-on-one
those
care.
other.
We just
Then
went
they
through
go
that
back
with
to
the
their
John
house.
Brown.
So it's not where
Because,
replacement, but
you know, the core of the
it's
city
definitely
here
better than
was
going
not
to board
producing
for
enough students.
instruction.
to
And that's why we had to do
fill
that
our school, and so that's
switch.
why we had to do
Kids
that
and
boundary
I
adjustment.
see this
That's
bigger
problematic
is,
is when
I think
stuff
that's
is
not
still
just
required
required
to teach
teacher
them
instruction
instruction
down
becomes
as a
challenging,
whole
Mhm.
to level out,
parents
so
don't
Yes.
that
understand,
ideally
so
you get to every building is sitting at somewhere can even school setting.
Cause one of the things.
3, if we're not gonna
But you're
close
gonna
the
have
school,
to, you'd have to.
then
mass
you're
it.
leveling out
Right,
that.
right.
You
Right.
have to, that would trigger everybody's doing boundary line adjustments and not just one
There's a
elementary.
lot.
If you get them down to that level, then wherever the growth comes, you
Do you
take
have a lot of
capacity.
meters?
I think
I
the
saw it
problem
posted in the
is
hallway
what we
just
do, this is
today.
what I see just doing one.
It's
In my
like
mind,
it's
it's
close
just
to a,
because, so then that one is
And it was
an
daylight
influx,
savings
and so
time,
then
so
now,
that-
okay, we just moved you, now we're moving
Well,
you again, instead of like holistically, how do we get?
So it wasn't a-
Number
it was
is
a-
already at
it's a little
level, it's sustainable
It is a
for
pretty
5
normal
to 10
day.
years versus.
And that's
We
where
just haven't
his maps
that
and new
speaks to,
builds
like,
comes in too,
Exactly.
because then we can decide, okay, we're gonna have
Yeah.
to adjust a little bit more.
It's
Well,
just
my
a struggle
struggle here
because
is
majority of the
every 2
building
years,
is
that's
all
what
in
we do
like that.
John Brown zones.
But one of the things that
Sped program.
we look at, several different features.
This is specific
Talk
to
about
facilities
that
and
things that are like the body is adjusted every 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So you may have to type of realignment in a 5 to 10 year period, looking at the populations within those so that you level them all out like you do in the districts, and level them all out, so say, okay, every 10 years, we look at this and say, all right, we have 1,000 kids, we got 6 schools, then we wanna have, you know, whatever that
Programs.
equals out, I should have picked 1,200 kids.
Mhm.
And then you got 200 kids per school, and then draw your lines to best capture 200 kids per school.
It's just hard doing that
With transportation.
that and where the neighborhoods are and, you know, cause like the neighborhood that I grew up in, there used to be kids in every single house and now.
But if you don't wanna
There's a
close
lot
a
of
school,
diaper changing.
it's better to do that every 5
Yeah,
to
they
10
have to
years
have
and redo those
That's
boundaries
Yeah.
than to have to do it every other year.
Well, I think we're
Yeah,
constant,
and I
where
think
your
you're
parents
worried about bringing
have.
the data in,
Sure.
where the new subdivisions are, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
They have preschool.
But you're gonna have to kinda say, okay, based off of a square mile for
Never,
example.
if you're just having a bad
Every
day,
square mile,
you
is
have to
we're not
still have
getting
that
that
question for
kids in
they are
houses
so
anymore.
small.
So what kind of population are we talking about?
Cause I remember when we first got here, when we did an annexation, the Brookshire annexation, the first assumption was that's gonna produce 1,000 kids into the school
Oh, yeah.
district. And it
And
didn't.
that, yeah, it didn't.
And how close to 1,000 are we?
I know we got quite a few kids in there, but it's not enough.
Fluctuates
Yeah.
based on
Yeah, that first phase of Brookshire, you know,
So moving them all and
they
decreasing
were
enrollment
saying,
after
screaming that it's gonna be 1,000 kids.
It won't help with the enrollment, but it certainly will help with
2 years ago about the apartment complex, and, you know,
Everybody was
everybody
terrified.
I was terrified about all those
Hasn't turned
apartments
into-
and where you get 5 or 6 kids out of it.
Yeah.
Well, when you look at our
To me,
enrollment continues to
that's
go
a
down,
little
like,
bit
yes, our high school's going up, but elementary, we have more kindergartners, we have less kindergartens coming in than we have fifth graders.
But just walking in my neighborhood, it's the families with the younger kids that sold and moved out of state when we,
I mean, we just, a
after
couple years
2020,
ago,
because it got too expensive here.
Yeah.
They could make more money selling their house here and move somewhere else.
We looked
It's
falling
at
short,
Texas, just as, we did like a chart in the Texas,
I can't even
and
fathom
just
what
picked it,
500.
we just zoomed in.
Well, Apple, how many
We
people
picked
get
the
there?
city,
Apple couldn't
and
be
it was
at
close to a
They're
lake.
not building
And
was
we
built
zoomed
for
in,
just
and we
two
picked a
grade
house,
levels.
and it was a
2 classrooms per grade
quarter-acre
level,
lot,
and Garwood, John
and it was
Brown.
a big house, and with a big swimming pool,
Yeah.
and it was less than $200,000.
Yeah.
And our house was
Well, we didn't
on the
write
county
anything down.
assessment roll.
They have stuff here.
Okay, guys.
Your guys' board looks pretty empty over there.
Let's go back. We just went writing. We had some really good conversation. So let's capture.
There's nothing on your board.
We actually captured our conversation.
Well, we didn't. We were too busy with the conversation.
Jake or Lisa get to say what we were talking about.
Jake, because I'm typing, so Jake will have to be the speaker. Let's start with that since you guys actually have something on the board. These are our brainstorms. Okay, so this is if enrollment continues to decrease.
So we talked about possibly repurposing a school to move Mountain View and Mountain View Middle into there. Since it'd probably cost a lot to get Mountain View fixed up with that 18 million, so maybe it wouldn't be worth investing all that money into there
And then
within
possibly
5 years.
renting Mountain View out and making some money off of it.
Mhm.
That gets a little tricky. I looked into that a little bit. We have a lot of laws that we have to work around to lease that facility. Not that it's impossible, but.
So if you're closing and repurposing a school, then that means you would move attendance, you'd modify attendance.
Modify the boundaries.
I know we're specifically talking elementary.
Yes.
No, I think bus routes more
As
efficient.
a caveat to that though, at the point in time where that kind of boundary adjustment took place,
You're probably
I would want
secondary.
to take a hard look at the secondary situation to see whether or not we can make an appropriate adjustment.
So I'm just gonna take out elementary and say modify existing school boundaries.
Can you knock out both with just one move, potentially?
Okay. What else?
That was pretty much it.
Well, and,
Oh,
and
okay.
until you close and repurpose a school, we're gonna have to continue to address boundary lines and balance out students
Which
in the,
parents don't want.
I know, but one of the things that I brought up is if you did it every 5 to 10 years and balance out the numbers between all of the schools, you're not doing it as frequently and one chunk at a time type of thing. You do it kind of like where you change the districts for your board members. You look at the population, you level it out as much as you can. There's transportation issues and everything else that goes along with
More
that.
comprehensive and systematic.
You either have to do it on a timeline basis or figure out the trigger points where you would have to. You know, if a school dropped below 200 kids, then maybe it's time to take a look at it.
We also talked earlier about moving boundaries for the new houses, like all of those, if we were, before everyone starts moving into Hayden Canyon area, can we say that area is going to be bused north?
Yeah, that one goes down here under attendance boundaries.
I think Rebecca made a really good point while we were over there. I mean, that all sounds great, but we really do need that map of what the 5 to 10 year for the city, for Athol, for Rathdrum. And so we can strategically start for Hayden, so we can strategically really start looking at that, because even though having that is not always indicative of kids, it's nice to know this is coming. So how do we strategically have more of a globalistic trajectory of where we're moving, so we can start plotting a little bit better instead of it. Right now it just feels like we make a change and then we have to be reactive because
we're
then
constantly reacting.
Yeah.
Well, and you'd even have to get it from the county, because
Right.
the county's subdividing 5-acre
Yeah.
lots more than the
County's gonna
cities
be-
are.
Yeah.
will
for
be
us,
huge, but
like,
having all of that would be nice to then when we're
I think we gave you
Yep.
the one that we had.
mhm.
And I can forward you the
It's
email.
pretty
I
easy,
got.
just, it's potentially 200 more houses, which is
Right.
huge for the city limits, but the bigger impact is definitely the county right now.
Yeah,
They're-
for sure.
But the little people aren't going on 5-acre parcels, unfortunately. Not really.
No, but if they turn into smaller than 5, because they can.
They don't have-
Unless
they
you're
don't have
doing
the city.
multi-generational situations where it's grandparents and
And you're
parents,
seeing that too.
right?
Yeah.
And
Especially
then
if
they're
they
dividing
continue
out
with
plots or
ADUs,
doing,
They
you know.
continue with all these ADUs, that's totally gonna bump
Mhm.
people into, multi-generational homes.
What is ADUs?
Accessory dwelling units. So a lot of
Like
times,
a
secondary,
mother-in-law.
yep.
Yeah, so you're gonna have mom and dad living, mom and dad move into a shop or a accessory. Yeah, an accessory place in the house that gets occupied by their kids or their
Just
parents.
make
or
that up.
children.
Oh, it's a real thing. It's
Yeah.
it's an apartment on the top of a shop. It's called a shome.
Pretty sure you just made that up.
I wish I was that creative. I promise you I'm not.
I literally looked at him like, did you just make that up?
Okay, Jake, do you want to tell us what we talked about so I can capture it?
We also had a very similar conversation about closing and repurposing a school. We didn't come up with any recommendations in terms of like what that trigger of enrollment would be, but I think that was kind of the consensus, if it's okay to speak for the group, that if our enrollment decreases, like we have to pull in from the edges a little bit. We also spent some time talking about how it might be beneficial for the functional capacity of our remaining schools to take a look at some specialized programs. Like if we balanced out the number of one-on-ones that are in an elementary school, for example, we might be able to actually increase the functional student enrollment capacity just with fewer adults. So we clearly have all of the specifics lined out for us here.
See that?
It looks really nice.
One thing I
It's
do
all
want
right here.
to add that we talked about and Bob agreed with me is we're talking about, it sounds like both groups talked about closing and repurposing the school, and I did say I feel like the board has been, and I can't speak for the board, but he agreed with me the consensus would be that we would go to a 4-day, we would look at other options before that we're not jumping straight to a closing. It would be, we would look at 4-day, what other things we could do because parents have come out really strong that they do, even though they understand from a fiscal standpoint, it makes sense, but from the kid standpoint, from the community, from the family standpoint, they love their small neighborhood schools, and so we would try to protect that at all costs
I guess
if
the
possible.
question mark about that is, how would that change, produce a better result in terms of enrollment in the schools?
A 4-day week.
Yeah.
I don't know that it does.
Wouldn't
make
I think
any
it just
difference.
saves
It's,
money.
it's just a
Saves
money
money.
savers, but it's not necessarily gonna save
Yeah,
as much as
yeah.
we need
So
to
it-
save.
So that's a different conversation, I
Right.
think, than
Than a
what we were
facility
really talking about.
conversation, yeah.
For me, it's the money side of it.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear. I don't know if I can speak for everybody, but like I don't think we're in favor of closing a school.
Mm,
That's
right.
not what we're proposing.
No,
but
no.
if we're
No,
looking
but
at it purely from a facility
Right.
standpoint, that seems to be kind of a logical next
I
step.
mean, if we go back and look 5 years ago, I think we were 2,300 elementary kids across 6 schools, and now we're at 1,800, and we're going to go down again next year because we're graduating bigger 5th grade classes out, and we keep bringing tiny
Unless
baby
we have a lot of
classrooms in.
kinders coming our way.
That would be
Yeah, and I
It's
don't-
been on the decline.
We're not seeing that as
Right.
far as families moving in.
So where I think like the 4 days would maybe be more of like a short-term money-saving financial decision
Mhm.
that the board would have to make. This is looking like 5-10 years down the road, like if we're having 200 kids in an elementary school, like the district can't afford to keep them all open at that.
Yeah,
you
No,
know?
because you're gonna
Is
have
it
class sizes
sustainable?
of like 12.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
it would
not
be
the best
interesting
use of
to
dollars.
know what like the financial tipping point is. Like what would the enrollment be where it would no longer make
Yeah.
sense? Is that something that
Well,
we
I think
could-
you can look at like Post Falls School District, and their levy is half as much as ours.
Right.
They do have more kids than we do, but they have
7
fewer
elementary
schools than we have.
schools,
Yeah.
1 high school, 1
Yeah.
alternative school, 2 middle schools.
Yeah,
Yep.
Their high school's 1,500 students.
and a lot of their,
Coeur d'Alene only has 2
They
high
actually have
schools.
one more building than we do.
Post Falls,
Josh and I were comparing.
they have one more elementary school. We have one more high school,
Yeah.
and we have the same number of middle schools, so it's actually the same.
No, Josh, they do have one more building. We actually sat down and compared it on Friday.
What building do they have?
I'll write them out for you.
Anyway, the other part of that though is their elementary schools are somewhere between 500 and 700 kids.
And
Because
they're
they,
built for that.
because they do have more kids in their district than we have. But because they're, Kyle? No. Tell me your first name, please.
Kyle.
Kyle, okay. Kyle, when we were talking, Kyle said, not to throw Kyle under the bus, but he made a really good point, so I'm not actually throwing him under the bus, but it is a lot easier to spread kids out if you have 5 classrooms in the school at that grade level than it is to have 2
Mm.
Or one at Twin.
or 1.
And that's what part of our levy is, right? We have 25 teachers on our levy, and that helps balance classroom size. And then
Mhm.
because we have small schools, you can't
Yes.
optimize classroom sizes easily. So
Right.
you end up with a little bit of inefficiency.
Yep.
As small classes, or as schools get smaller, you're gonna have more and more problems with that.
Yep.
So you're either gonna have to go to the community for an increased levy
Which we don't want to do.
to make up that difference, or because this funding will be stretched so far from the state, because it's funded by 88, right?
Right.
But you're still gonna have a principal, you're gonna have office staff for
And
each school. So unless
custodial
you have,
and,
like,
yeah.
the principal for 2 elementary schools or something odd, you're gonna have those issues of just the basic staffing for each school.
And that's part of what we got forced into with the levy not passing is, so much of the budget is really salaries and benefits that you can't make the necessary adjustment without looking at personnel. And, so we've been forced to do that. If the levy doesn't pass this time around, it gets really gruesome, really, really catastrophic. I mean, I can't overemphasize how bad it will be, frankly.
Just look at West Connor. I mean,
Yeah.
We need to
It's
stop
all right.
putting it out in the universe. We need to just say it positive. It's going to pass.
Well, it's gonna pass, I've been saying that, I think it's gonna pass by 60%, that was my prediction.
I know.
But I'm just
Have
saying.
you talked to God lately? Is he
Flip
on?
side
I'd like his actual, it'd be nice if God could tell me that it's good, it's not, it's good.
Okay, we're gonna.
Okay. You're almost up there, Bob,
Like I said earlier, though, in order to know like what that breaking point is of, is it 200 or is it 150?
Yeah, what is the
have to
trigger?
run that daily math and then do your percentages of your attendance rate and then add in your administration salary benefits.
Right, I think you
Right.
start
How
looking
we
at the
fund.
inequity again between, you know, class sizes in other buildings, how
We
much
talked
we're,
about that.
you know, spending to have a functional school versus the
Well,
efficiency
sure, but
of
just
shared.
find to what that
Yep.
bottom
Well,
number is, and
right.
then you have the factor.
And we
of
can,
that.
we can tell you that right now as far as like, because the state, the way they fund us, take the average daily attendance out, but the way they determine how many teachers we get, how many administrators we get, how many classified staff we get is based on the number of kids, and there's a ratio basically. So, for example, for kindergarten, it's one kindergarten teacher for every 40 kindergarten students because they only fund half day
Half day.
kindergarten. We provide full day,
But it's
but we
20
use.
or 23 for the other.
Jessica can, she probably knows it's more kids, it's ironic. The ratio is greater at the elementary school than it is at the high school, and that's because there are so many graduation requirements, so we have to have more teachers up there, because we have to make sure we're offering all the classes the kids need to be able to graduate. So, it's like, I don't remember what the number is,
So, for
but.
example, it's 1 to 40 for kindergarten, but when you get down to our high school level or secondary level, you get down to 18 and a half, yeah.
And then
1 to
it's,
18 and a
and
half.
is it 20 for the rest of elementary, or is it 23?
It's 23 for 4 through 6, and then 20 for 1 through 3.
Yeah.
But
So-
those funding units aren't just for teachers, right?
Right, it's nurses.
It's for all staff.
Well, they, no, cause they do a separate,
There's instructional
there's
breakdown and
instructional and then there's
administration.
PPS.
Okay.
So it also
But
dictates
it's still a
to
lot
us.
more than
But
just
it gets a
classroom
lot,
teachers.
you get it in the same, all chunked together, right?
No.
Yes,
Yeah, in the
it's-
salary-based portion.
So
But
basically,
they
we
separate
take our
right.
average daily attendance, it's multiplied by that factor, that gives us our support units. Our support units are then taken against Idaho code, so we get 1.021 per support unit for teachers. So then that's how we get our total number of teachers on the salary-based apportionment. They take all of it, I can go on. about
But,
this.
but then there's a different factor for PPS.
No, we use the same support units for our
So it's,
people
but
services.
it's time still multiplied by 1.02.
No,
Yeah.
pupil services is a little bit lower.
That's what, yeah, so it's, the pupil services don't come out of the 1.02
Yeah.
number for
And then we get
certified,
a
they're
really, really,
separate.
really, really small amount for classified.
Right, and then
Essentially,
even
we cover like
administrators,
37 classified employees.
yeah, and administrators is 0.75, I think, for administrators.
Close, yeah.
So when you look at, you know, people say all the time we're heavy in administration. Well, we have more administrators, we have 4 more administrators, but if you look at the number of kids we have, if we ran our school district like everybody else does and had the number of kids in each school that everybody else does, there would be 4 administrators we wouldn't need. But this district we've never done it that way. We've always done the small neighborhood schools, so,
And our schools can't have it, you can't.
and we've always been better.
Yeah.
We just have to help our community understand that.
Well, and that's the thing, we couldn't, like, to Kyle's point, we couldn't close Timberlake High School and expect all of those students to fit into Lakeland High School and combine them. We just don't have the capacity, the functional capacity or building capacity, we don't have the capacity.
Right,
to do
because
that.
we purposefully built our schools to keep our numbers
Based
where
off
we
of
want
the
them.
citizens' desire of small neighborhood school.
Yeah, you guys had a 87% passing rate to build Timberlake Middle School, right, back in the day?
Is it that high?
At least that's what's on the slide.
87%
Yeah, it's on our
passage
website.
rate for, when we ran the bond for Timberlake?
No,
I didn't-
passed by 29 votes, I think it was.
The bond for
Yeah.
the high school or the middle school?
High school.
Okay.
Oh,
The middle school is
school
higher.
was better, yes, you're right.
That's because we tried it with the 7th through 12th and the parents didn't like
Right.
it, so when we decided to split, they were like, yes.
Well, we tried it first we tried it as just a junior high move, and that was rejected. And so then we came back with a bond for the combined junior, senior high school. And that passed, but just very narrowly. And then later, of course, built the
And the
junior high.
parents didn't like having their 7th graders with the seniors.
Well,
I'd
it was partly
imagine.
that, but it was partly numbers. Once the school grew to the point where we were gonna either have to do additions or build a school for middle school, then it was a choice of what's the better alignment. And most people would agree that,
Was the middle
separate
school.
schools are better alignment.
Okay, it is 7 o'clock, so we're gonna